Hi, everyone. So today we are talking about big, happy money. I'm really excited to welcome to the Business as a Magical Practice podcast, Serena Hicks. Welcome, Serena.
Hello.
She did a big wave if you're checking in on YouTube.
Big wave.
Big wave. So Serena is a business coach who works with intentionally inclusive coaches and creators who are changing the world. She began her career at MTV News in New York City in 2000 after earning a Daytime Emmy Award as the sponsored content producer at the Tyra Banks Show. Okay. She left her corporate job to become a coach in November 2018. She's now killing it. She's now talking about big, happy money. And I'm just so delighted that you are here with me today.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here. I will only clarify that I started MTV News in 2000 and I got the Daytime Emmy in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
Only for the clarification, because someone somewhere is going to be like, the Tyra Show wasn't on in 2000. And they are actually accurate. Whoever that super fan is, you're right. It came later.
I hope all the Serena super fans are tuning in right now.
Thank you. So fun.
Okay, so the topic of the day is actually the name of the podcast. So let's just jump right in. How do you use business as a magical practice, Serena?
I think business is like a magical practice because two things. Number one, like you get to tap into your magic. And number two, like you have to tap into your magic. It's literally making something out of nothing. And we each have individual magics. And the three that I see the most often, misfit magic is my personal favorite. Everyone I know who is a helper, a healer, or in service to the world feels a bit like a misfit. And so one of the things that I teach my clients to do and that I endeavor to live, and I encourage everyone listening or watching to do, is to like recognize the things that make you feel like a misfit, or like that's your magic. Like that's the whole point. That's what makes you different. And that's like your actual magic. That was the gift that you were given, the power that you were meant to yield on the planet. The other two forms of magic, and it's like, it's just helpful to sort of, there's more magic. There's magnificent magic, but I think that fits under the umbrella of misfit magic 99% of the time. The other two that I think trip people up is knowing if you are dominant with messy magic or meticulous magic. And we all do a little bit of everything, but I am a very messy magic. Like messy magic is my magic. I'm a little messy. And then I deem it messy because coming up in television production, I also did event production, like being meticulous is key. So it's just helpful to know, like I've had one-on-one clients who are real meticulous magic makers. And so for them, some of my practices and teachings make them crazy because they want like the 10-point checklist. And when I'm like, no, just do you, boo. They're like, but how? So it's fun to be able to translate. And this is where I'm like, it's helpful to know which is your predominant magic, because when we identified Vanessa as very meticulous magic, it was like, oh, okay. So I can say things in Serena speak, and then we translate them into something that her brain can really hold on to. And then vice versa, because a lot of times I have clients who are also messy magic makers, and they come from schools of thought that were really designed for meticulous magic makers. And so they feel like they're doing it wrong when they're coloring outside of the lines, when in fact, like that's their actual magic. So
how are you defining magic here?
I define magic as something glorious and healing and wondrous and supportive and sort of awe-inspiring and or mind-blowing, something that you feel, not any one thing. It's like, oh, okay, this is amazing. To me, that is magic.
So the reason why I named this podcast this is a lot of people who are magical or spiritual or like have some sort of connection, highly sensitive, often people that are connected to some greater beyond, they use their spiritual practice and their magical practice to fuel their business. And like, of course, that is a leg up over the muggles, but obviously, but I wanted to actually talk about the flip side of that, of how we can actually use our business as fuel for our soul's evolution and our spiritual
Hmm.
practice in and of itself. Can you go
Hmm.
into that?
Yeah, man. That's how big happy money got defined, if you will, as a concept. So money is just a lagging indicator as far as like it is just a way you can measure. And the reason I like it is we live in a capitalist society at this time that, in my opinion, has room for improvement. And so, not having money and complaining, which is what I did for a very long time, is an option. I will name none of them as right or wrong, but my preference at this time is we don't just vote with our dollars. I mean, just using even like, it's a cheap example, but even eggs. There are now more free range eggs available than there were 10 years ago because most of us, those of us who bought the free range eggs and prioritized that, ultimately created even more demand for even more farmers to be like, oh, I'm going to do actual free range, not just the most horrible version of 10,000 chickens in a too small space. So it's like we can, complain about that, but when those of us who decided to spend our dollars on the things we wanted more of did so, we got more of it. So I love the idea is, I mean, I agree with you. It's no doubt why we're talking, that the spiritual magic practice of money making, it's not about worshiping money or prioritizing money. It's about, okay, if I want to make changes and I vote with my dollars, I want, number one, more dollars. Number two, something I talk with my clients and anyone who will listen endlessly about is like proper pricing is not just for you, it's for the client. It sets them up for experience. When something is super easily accessible and or free, we rarely give it the same amount of attention as when we're invested in something. Like it, using myself as an example, I always had like enough, but I was like very sort of chaos version of like broke. And also like I'll take risks here and there. So like that didn't always pan out for like the first 40 years of my life. So whatever. So this is an interesting concept for me because in January of this year, I found myself in a mastermind that I had invested $25,000 for 6 months to be able to participate in. So I'm in this like 3-day virtual kickoff event because Corona was raging at the time. And so it's like I'm in my hotel room. So first of all, I rented a hotel room so that I could focus away from the cats and away from my beloved because I'd invested $25,000. Protecting my investment with 3 nights in a hotel was a no-brainer. Secondly, had a lot of fun. Finally, I saw an ad for a thing and I totally bought it. And it was $1,000 and it seemed like a really cool program. I've literally never touched it. And it's so interesting to me because I think $1,000 is a significant amount of money, I think. But based on compared to my $25,000 investment, compared to all these other things, I like just have never prioritized it. I've never carved the time out. And it's not that it's a bad program, it's that I wasn't invested highly enough.
I so it I hate I hate when people talk about this because it bugs
Yeah.
me. It
Yeah.
bugs me so much that people are like, you have to price high or else people aren't invested in it. But I have so much personal experience that it's true. But it still like rubs me the wrong way because
I
I
love it. You're like, I hate this.
and I don't think it's like a hard and fast rule, and like I think it's just my brain like poking holes in it. But like in terms of personal experience, like when I invested heavily, it like the very first time, like a 5-figure investment in
Mhm.
a certain program, it was the first time that I considered myself like a business owner versus a freelancer, and that was like an
Right.
unquestionable perspective shift because I like
Yeah.
so this podcast, like there's not just, I know you're in the coaching space, but like there's not just coaches listening, there's any sort of online business owner, and so I know
Hmm.
like so the freelancer to business owner switch was just a mind-blowing thing for me, and I'm sure I could have gotten there without that investment, but it was the
Hmm.
thing, it was the thing
Yep.
that made me be like, oh.
I'm serious this time. Totally. And that's, I will also offer actually to your point, it's not the amount. Like when I talk about big happy money, it's never the actual amount, it's the energy. So, like, uh, there's a time just 3 years ago that if I had invested $1,000, I would have been all the way in. That would have been huge, 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 huge. It's
Mhm.
just that at this season in my life, it 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 doesn't have that effect. And my very first investment in a coach was when I was a freelancer,
Mhm.
became small business owner, became coach in that order. it was 5K and I had to do payments because I was living on the last part of my 401k that I'd cashed in. And
Mm,
that $1,500 first payment was the equivalent of $10 billion as far as I'm concerned.
yeah,
Like I literally didn't know how I was going to pay rent in 2 weeks. Like
yeah,
had no idea. It was like doubling down all the chips on the table. And to your point and mine, it doesn't matter that it was a $1,500 payment on a $5,000 program. I was all the way in.
yeah.
It wasn't the amount of money, it was what it meant to me then.
Let's scoot back a little bit because you've dropped
Yeah,
big happy money a few times, and there are definitely
yeah,
people who don't know you or the concept of big
yeah,
happy money. So like, why
sure.
are you using
Explain.
this phrase? And tell us more
Yeah.
about it.
Big happy money is a phrase that sort of came about by accident, but the shortest version is I don't just want to make money. I don't even just want to get by. I want big, happy money. So, like, integrity is a key component in this, as in happy money, as in if there's something unsavory associated with whatever product or service I'm buying in, I'm all the way out. That's not happy money. That's dirty. So I'll touch none of that. Thank you very much. And being happy, it's like, what you put out into the world is what you get back into the world. So, like, especially for business owners, this is not specific to coaches, any business owner, something that makes me ragey and breaks my heart at the same time is when they're like, I don't want to spend any money, and they're constantly looking for the cheapest way. And then these people always attract people who are looking to not spend any money and constantly do it in the cheapest way. And it's this whole perpetual cycle where they're like, nobody wants to spend money. And then they're mad when they pay like the electricity bill. And I'm like, hey, we protect things we love, which includes money. So even the concept of big happy money is not just spend willy nilly and be bananas and who cares what, it's not that. But like, you can be happy when you pay the electric bill because electricity is an option. You can be happy when you pay your speeding ticket because you broke the rules and you knew it and you got caught, and that's okay. But like, you can be happy paying taxes. Let's use that as an example. Now that I'm making big money, I'm like, holy shit, before this year is over, I'm going to spend more money on my taxes than my family home, like the house my parents stretched to buy when I was in sixth grade. So, like, I could bitch and moan about that. I could bitch and moan about a lot. I'm very good at bitching and moaning, but like, that's stupid. Why would I do that? Why not like happy money? Like, holy shit, I'm going to spend more on my fair share of taxes than I used to ever make in a year, more than my family like spent when they stretched in sixth grade to buy a house. So like, big happy money. Here's my shortcut. If you guys are like, I think I follow what she's saying. If you ever bought a Peloton and fell in love as we do, that's big happy money. You didn't just buy a bike for $1,600. You bought, holy shit, a bike that gives you access to XOXO Cody and Tunde and all of the best teachers on the planet and yoga classes. And so, like, big happy money is when you spend money on something and you're like, fuck yes. And you're blown away afterwards. Like, you thought you were happy when you spent, but before it's over, you're like, that was so much more than I knew what I was doing. And so when you live that concept, you choose to have that experience, meaning you choose to find what was great in every contract, every coaching relationship, every time you go to the movies, every time you choose to spend money. That's a key part of big happy money. You're not authorized to act like you were victimized by spending money. It's not a thing. It's like, you made the choice to spend it or don't.
Hmm.
And you provide the same service to your clients. So
Hmm.
not underprice, over deliver, which sort of can be a good thing, but generally I don't advise. It's the like, blow their mind, let them know what they're getting, deliver it, and then put a cherry on top. Whoa.
So
That's big happy money.
I'm wondering what if this falls into it, where it's not just about you're buying the most expensive thing for all of the expensive
No,
things, and because like
no.
I put off for 5 years getting a new car and
Hmm.
did it like it was like run down total piece of shit because I don't care about cars at all. It's literally like
Hmm.
don't care at all. I barely drive. I'm such a hermit that like car doesn't matter at all. But then we have two
Hmm.
different apartments on Maui, which is like means very
Hmm.
expensive rent, two expensive rent payments. So like I'm guessing there's an interplay or like there's a factor of prioritizing and identify what actually lights you up and what you're excited about, right?
Yes, totally. Like, that's actually really well said. Like, I don't have a car. literally. So granted, my partner has a car and he's been very generous. And like when we moved in together, it was very much use my car whenever you need it, which is, maybe once a week. But
Exactly.
to your point, like I live downtown. I walk to my office. We walk, whatever. So, right, that's not a priority for me in any way, shape, or form. Also, some people prioritize travel, some people prioritize art. It's literally whatever you decide. But it's also, here's the thing, sometimes I think people think I'm just like spend, charge a lot. And I'm like, no. It's also owning slash protecting your money, as in knowing where your money is, knowing whether you're investing or not investing. Credit, I'm so in love with credit. I refuse to be on the anti-credit and debt train. I don't know any huge business people who have never had debt or credit. I do know this is a component of big happy money. Clients often come to me and they're like, okay, but I have to get out of debt and then I can relax. And I'm like, you cannot make money while you hate debt.
Hmm.
You cannot create wealth while you hate debt, just like you cannot proclaim to love the Lord while you hate a certain group of people.
Hmm.
Just can't. It's incongruent. And so loving the debt, even if it's like, well, it was all consumer debt and it was a bad idea. I'm like, well, it wasn't a bad idea at the time, meaning that part of you got to satisfy that. And even if current part of you is like, I wouldn't do that again, you get to forgive and love. It's like you can't, I love this saying too. It's like you can't hate yourself to lean. Someone's trying to lose weight, people try to shame themselves or say, I hate my stomach or I hate my thighs. Like that is rejecting your own body, and that is mean at best. And that is not how someone actually sustainably creates a more healthy body. It's
Hmm.
just the same with our money. Big happy money is like you can't drown in shame for previous mistakes or debt, or try to like pay as little as possible but charge as much as possible. It's all like out of integrity.
Mm.
And by integrity, I don't just mean the word that we all throw around. I mean, like, if a ship's hull is out of integrity, the ship sinks because it takes on water.
Hmm.
So, like, integrity is what allows magic, like, and businesses to boom and thrive forward,
Hmm.
at unreasonable rates.
So I just want to scoot back to the hating the body thing, just because I
Yeah.
feel like I have a good example here. I have a friend who she has always had a problem relationship with her belly.
Hmm.
It's like she has the body type where like that's where like her body stores fat, and she's given birth to kids and X, Y, and Z. So she literally hadn't looked in at her stomach naked for years.
Mm.
The one piece bathing suit, the like just not looking at the mirror when you're changing. And there's actually been studies that show that when you put your skin in the sun is actually will tone lean muscle. And like it feels like such a great metaphor of like
Hmm.
letting things of shame that you're
Hmm.
ashamed about, like put it in the sun, and that will actually
Yes.
fix the problem or what you're dealing
Yes.
with the problem. Sorry,
Yeah.
my brain went
No,
there. I
you're
had to
exactly
share.
right. No, your brain is brilliant. Your brain is exactly right. Like it's shame is what shuts everything down. I mean, let's just be honest. And that's all when people bring me their money issues, it's always ultimately shame for what they perceive as a mistake. And like I filed a bankruptcy in 2008 before Bernie Madoff ruined the whole economy. So that was a huge source of shame for like 7 or 8 years. Bankruptcy doesn't fall off in 7 years as it used to, because people are like, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's on for 10 now. And
Oh.
I lived it. So I'm real clear on that. And mostly the shame was like the problem. And then not just the shame, but what, like the malignancy that grew from the shame is then my pervasive thought patterns were like, I have to make sure this never happens again. So I'm never going to overspend again. So I was always trying to do things on the cheap, which actually makes me think of your car situation, which might be different. But I remember I like bought a used car for 2,500, and then I was constantly repairing it where it was in the shop, and then I was rescheduling and recoordinating my whole life to get it to the shop or from the shop because I was single at the time. And at some point, I remember sitting down and realizing a $200 a month car payment will be less than I am spending on repairs every 2, 3, and 4 months, not to mention the battery dying and me being stranded and calling AAA. And so it's like ironic in my attempt to quote save money, I was spending exponentially more. And it didn't feel like an attempt to save money. It was like I never had more than like an extra $10 at the end of the week. And so that's where, take it all the way back to big happy money. When it's like, okay, you get what you give. Let me give love and attention to my money so that I'm not willy nilly spending any of it. And also, I'm going to intentionally spend with love and not shame. So that involved like phone calls being like, hi, so and so, I need to borrow money. And in my family, it came complete with a heaping of shame. And it was like, no problem. Thank you. You are allowed to have your feelings, but can you cut me the check? That was the beginning of making tons of money. Is it was like, I got to decide that they get to have whatever feelings they want, but I'm no longer going to shame myself and deem myself unworthy. And like, we were talking before we were recording. I'm at like 550, 600, almost, yeah, 600K in less than 2 years. And like 350K just in this calendar year. And we're in June. So 6 months in, which is, exponentially more than I'd ever previously made in a year. And, sometimes when people are like, well, how did you make all this big happy money? And I'm like, I decided I was inherently worthy of love and forgiveness and everything, including money, while I was hella broke and had just cashed in the last bit of my 401k and lived by myself in a studio apartment with 2 cats while single. That's how. Like, I didn't earn my worthiness.
Well, part of that is the like you decided, but it's also the willingness to do anything. Like the willingness to be super uncomfortable and ask your family for money.
Yep.
I have a
Oh, yeah.
strong feeling that's a lot of people's worst nightmare, like having to
It's
ask.
most people's worst nightmare.
Yeah,
You're
and
totally right.
doing the thing, being like, okay, no, I've decided that this is the goal that I want, and I'm just going to do anything to make it happen. Instead of like, yeah, it's a lot more fun to create new content. Yeah, it's a lot more fun to like post on Instagram. Yeah, it's a lot more fun to do X, Y, and Z in my business. But like, are those the uncomfortable things that actually matter towards getting me my big happy money?
It's a prioritization basis. And you're also right. It was almost this I have nothing to lose energy, not from a place of not caring about myself, but from a place of like, yeah, I no longer want to prioritize everyone else's opinion of me or how they perceive it looks. The integrity of my life and my being is more important than how it might appear to others. And like, that was the beginning. And you're so right. People say it all the time. So if you're listening, I want you to hear this part. I always had that money, borrowing money, technically was always available. I just insisted it wasn't because I did know, rightly so, it would come with a big helping of shame. But there's a difference between it's not available versus I don't want to be uncomfortable while accessing it. Like, that's different, friends. So just as you were saying, when I decided, yes, I'm probably going to be shamed. And also it's more important that I know how I'll pay rent for the next 3 months and have a chance to catch my breath and grow my business from there than to try to hide in my shame and pretend I know what the fuck I'm doing when I'm like staying up till 2 in the morning every night because I have no idea how I'll pay rent. So it's like borrowing, uncomfortable as it was at the time, was almost like my declaration, almost deciding all over again, like you were saying, to the universe of like, I'm not fucking kidding. I will take care of myself, even if other people are displeased. So yeah.
What do you feel like the relationship between discomfort and growth is?
I think Brooke Castillo says discomfort is the like currency to our growth. And
Mm,
I think I love that. But I think I just think like, if I'm not uncomfortable, and it can be fun uncomfortable, like there's versions that we get used to, but like if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm not necessarily growing. And I believe in seasons, meaning we don't need to be growing all day, every day, 24/7, 365. We're fucking creatures and magic makers, which means there's periods of making great magic and then there's periods of rest.
mhm,
Like,
mm.
we are not superior to iPhones that must also be recharged. So I feel very strongly that like there's growth periods and there's times to be like, no, I'm recharging. But
Mhm.
like discomfort, I think is I don't know how to say it other than I'm like, ooh, it's working. I'm doing it. I'm uncomfortable. This means I'm in the sweet spot.
Well, so I'm asking kind of selfishly because I had a really, really strong feeling that the more willing you are to be uncomfortable is like an indicator of how quickly your business would grow. And then I was working with a somatic therapist, and they were like, "Oh,
Mm,
that's interesting. Like, why do you have those coupled together?" And I was like,
mm,
"Oh shit!" So I'm still playing around with this, like this couplet, like how to decouple these two things, because like
hmm.
I still believe it's true, but like does it have to be so? And then playing around with
No.
the taboo of like, what if people, saw it as like, think, oh, she has it so easy. Things come so easily for her. As someone coming
Mm,
from the Midwest, that like really freaks me out because I really am attached to how much hard work I put into my business. So like, this
right.
is an area I'm playing in. So I just had to
No,
bring.
I love it. Wait, you brought up a valid thing. So, like, I mean, as you do, but like, if it's always about the discomfort, then we've entered the realm of like, oh, is this a trauma response?
Mm,
Part of which fueled my business growth, my willingness to be uncomfortable. And I have multiple clients who are in recovery, who've recovered from like hard drugs, which, takes real effort.
yeah.
Not everyone is able to make that transition.
Wow.
And it's interesting because I'm like, when we talk about stuff, they're just something that they have all mentioned is this sense of like, when I know I'm afraid, I go there because I know my growth is there. And I'm like, interesting. But also, sometimes our growth is just to get comfortable where we're at, as in, like, the discomfort, I do think of it like, oh, it's working. Here we go. I'm in my growth edge. But it's also like, yeah, I probably grew really fast because ultimately I was leveraging trauma responses and things change. So, like, I just shut down my one on one practice a few months ago. Like, I'm finishing my one on one contracts, but I just launched my first mastermind. So, my first group. So, only group. And it's like, it's a whole new world. And it's wonderful, but it's like shifting gears in like a big, it's like if you go from fifth gear and like you just like flip through fourth gear down to third, and it's like, whoa, there's like this physical adjustment that's happening where it's like, oh, this is totally different, also perfect. But like my great discomfort, so I think maybe this is also in play with what you and I are just speaking of, is like I just had the most magnificent 3.5 day kickoff event and so many tears and so much happiness. And today is a Tuesday. I said goodbye. Our final like brunch was Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. And I have just been like trying to support my nervous system in recalibrating ever since. There is a great part of me that I have never been so honored or humbled to lead a group of people. Like we're all these, let's just illuminate the whole world. And then there's also a part of me that's like, I don't think I can hold enough space for this love. Like I'm not worthy. And so then it's like, okay, that is just an old brain pattern. None of us are worthy. So better me than someone else. Like, what is this worthiness? It's like that inherent human issue of like, I don't think I'm worthy for this much love. I don't think I'm, and then it's like, well, I don't I don't trust anyone else to help them. Like I'm just gonna I'm just gonna take the lead. But does that make sense? It's like I've expanded so like my heart is so terribly happy, and at the exact same time, like maybe I've gone too far. Maybe I should just fuck it all up and like slow my roll. And it's like, well, that's where my discomfort is now. But it's not the white hot discomfort it was when I was like, hello, Grammy, can I borrow $10,000? That was an entirely different version of white hot discomfort.
Okay, so
I think it evolves.
going off of that, what do you think the biggest difference has been in your growth from starting your business? So getting from like that, I'm in debt, I'm at zero, I'm in negative, to I'm
Yeah.
sustaining, I'm paying my rent, like
Hmm.
to like now way more than enough. Like what has been the big like transition point between those two?
The transition point that I hope everyone listening to will like settle into their nervous system and put into full effect immediately. Immediately. Listen up, you guys. I decided instead of doing I'm very good at it, instead of doing my complaining and navel gazing, that I already had enough information and innate talent, which I'm putting in air quotes if you're listening to me. Like, I'm sort of arrogant, but I'm not. So, like, I already had enough tools and techniques to help someone, not help everyone, not be cheered, adored, or celebrated by all, but like, wait, someone somewhere could be supported by the information and hard won experience that I have. Maybe I should just try to show up and support them by serving them, by selling it to them. Like, maybe I can make an offer on socials or otherwise let people know this is available. And so it's like I stopped, like, we're all talking now about like, it's not about the me, it's about the we. And I
Hmm.
stopped making it about me and my insecurities and my desire to grow a business. Nothing wrong with that. And my desire for rent money, also nothing wrong with that. Instead of focusing on that part of the equation, I focused on, I'll bet there's like at least one person in the 7 to 8 billion people on the planet who would like to hire me. I just one. And
Yeah.
then I just showed up on socials and decided to be in service in that way. And then I
Mhm.
just kept going. And then actually it was December of 2020. So in a pandemic, in case you're listening in the future, trying to remember what we all remember right now, yeah, like I think I started that November in 2020 with like 6 clients. And then in December, I signed 11 clients. And I didn't know you could sign 11 people in 1 month as a coach. It's like not a thing in the world, at least in my world. It's like if you sign 4, maybe 5 clients in a month, like you are hot shit, right? And I am sadly imperfect. I have typos all the time. I stutter sometimes. When I get really excited, I can't talk, which is an awkward thing for a coach. So, teaching and coaching, but I'm like, hold on, just collecting my nervous system. So I think I don't remember the exact number, but it started with me being like, I just want to show up and help the person who could use my help. Like, I'm only going to focus on them, much less on me. And then somewhere in December, when I'd like racked up 5 or 6 new clients at 10K each, I was like, hey, holy shit balls. And instead of like, I didn't make a goal of like, I'm going to do 100K. Like, my goal was very clear. I want to see how many like great clients, best clients I can welcome. Like, I want to see what's possible and I want to show everyone else what's possible. And I like marketed from that energy. I was, I think, very transparent. And in the very end, as of the 31st, I had my final yes and it was 11. And it was like, yeah, okay, that's what's possible. Everyone I know, everyone who knows me, and certainly everyone who knows me is like, okay, well, if she can do it, anyone can do it. It's the inspiration I offer. Everyone's like, okay, okay. So basically, if you just show up a lot and try to tell people how you can help them to the best that you can, which is going to be good on some days, not impressive on others, that's it. It's just being in that like helper, magic maker energy.
Mm, that's good. And so that one thing alone got you to where you are now?
Yeah. Yeah, that's everything. Because whenever we're worried about us and like, I need money, I need clients, I want an award, I want whatever, like totally human stuff, no shame. But it's like the opposite of when we're in our leadership energy, which whether you're a CEO or a consultant or an online business owner or a freelancer or a coach,
Mhm.
nobody pays you to be hyper insecure.
Yeah.
We hire our people because we're like, oh, they know what they're doing in this area. So while we don't want posturing, because we can all feel sort of posturing, what we do want is to hire people who are like standing in their full power and authority of how they can help us.
Mhm.
And I'll say that again dramatically, how they can or could help us. Like even heart surgeons can't make 100% guarantees. It's not a thing.
Mhm. Well,
They do the best they can.
so this totally applies even if you don't have a business. Like this applies to
Hmm.
anyone making money, period. Because I've
Hmm.
managed the teams of 7-figure businesses, and it's been
Mm.
so interesting the people who come and ask for raises, and they just people tend to be like, I want to be making more money so I can do X, Y, and Z, versus doing the entrepreneurial route of I I want to do this for you and this would be of service to you and I believe I deserve
Mhm.
this much additional compensation because of it. And like just like and I my my mind is a little less like it sounds less altruistic than what you're saying of like being of service to people. It's like realize that everyone's selfish. Like your employer, your client,
Yeah.
they don't care whether you want to make more money or not. Just tell them, like,
Right.
figure out how to serve them better and like price accordingly.
Yes. And this is big happy money in
Mhm.
that, like, yeah, man, get whatever you need to support you being sustainable. Meaning, like, even if it's an employee, it's the perfect example of like, ask for what you need. Don't be like, they don't pay me, and then go to another company and everybody just went through a lot of turmoil and chaos and transition when perhaps you could have just been like, hi, as a reminder, I do X, Y, and Z, and now I'm going to need an extra 15K a year with great love. But like,
Mhm.
sustainability is part of proper pricing.
Yeah.
And the big happy money is like, yeah, man, there's more money on the planet than I can even wrap my head around. So if you want some, no shame, no harm, no foul, just add some value. Offer a service. Let someone know how it could help them
Mhm.
with the price tag. The end.
Mhm. So as you're transitioning into a seven-figure business, what are the new things that you are putting together on the back end? What are or like having perspective shifts around?
Mm, I think what's interesting to me now is standing even more powerfully in, like, I think especially, okay, here's all I see in my clients this week anyways, and it's interesting as we talk about magic. Uh, it's like they're scared to yield their power, fully yield their power. And I'm like, well, that's cool. That's like how we were all conditioned. If you're a woman, a person of color, a woman of color in particular, like we've been conditioned to like be afraid of personal power and like just be a helper. Shh, don't get paid, say thank you, settle for crumbs. And so that is definitely my growth edge at this exact moment because um, I feel like I always say too much on podcasts. I think that's the value of if you follow me. I'm always very, very real. Um, I definitely, I just did this huge mastermind launch event and like I worked with a team of truly wonderful people. And I also think that there were more mistakes made than I'm actually comfortable. Like, I think with true and great love and appreciation, this is probably the best place to part ways. And like, my brain is full of like, but they're really nice, and they are. They're good people. They're really nice. We all make mistakes, But there's, it's like interesting to watch how my brain is trying to convince me from what I think is really just patriarchal programming
Mhm.
to try again. But we're talking like, with a $50,000 price tag attached to it, try again. And I'm also like, will I allow myself to know what I know,
Mhm.
which is nothing has gone wrong here. Nobody died. It was a good experience, but this isn't exactly the right fit for my next one.
Mm.
And like the people pleaser in me is like, shut up. You are not allowed to know that. If you just lead better and articulate better exactly what you need, it'll probably be even better. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting. I'm on the threshold of I either fully yield my power because it's not about me and it's not even about money, it's about my community and how do I best serve them? How do I burn brightly and not burn out? How do I, walk the talk? And so I think that that's the biggest thing. I'm finally like, I can sell shit and I can talk to people about what I can help them with. I could totally help them. Like those things I feel like I have on lock. Now it's like building the teams
Mhm.
and figuring out, except it's not, it's just trusting myself to like, and yeah, having permissing, if you will, giving myself permission to, I feel like what it used to be so much was very often black, white binaries. This is good, this is bad, this is working, this is not working. And now I'm feeling like I'm in a much more subtle shift of like, this is not bad. And also, this doesn't work for me. Sort of like, you know, I give myself food preferences. So now I need to give myself preferences
Mhm.
uh, in my long term partnerships and plans for business. But it just feels really audacious. And I pride myself on being audacious, but like this feels like new version of audacious.
Oh
I
my
want
god.
to be a nice person. I want to be a helper. I don't want to be a bitch.
Mhm. How exciting.
Thanks. Also, it's so weird. I was just like, I want to just be able to pay rent. Like 2 years ago, that was my only dream. Literally in June 2 years ago, I was looking at the calendar and Matt and I moved in together and in June of 2 years ago. And yeah, he was like, I'm gonna cover all the groceries. Don't even worry about rent. We moved into a new place at the end of July. So he was just like, I'm gonna cover June rent. I'm gonna cover July rent. You can start to contribute rent when we get into our new place. And like guys, that only bought me like an inch of breathing room. I had so many bills and things that I was still just barely making it, but that inch of breathing room was like the beginning of everything. That was glorious.
That can happen in
Yeah.
a month.
Yeah. Like a month or right in 2 years. I'm like, holy shit, we are 8 million miles away from that. Yeah. And I started as a consultant. So I love that you mentioned like everyone's not a coach listening to this. I
Yeah.
did social media, like marketing, teaching very small business owners like how to, not just show up and say things like, buy my shit. I'm like, that is not a selling point. Speak to what they get.
Taco Tuesday.
Right? I'm like, what?
Uh,
80 hashtags. Like, no, guys, say something that is enticing.
okay, so switching gears because we're like running close to the end of our time together. What were the daily magical spiritual practices that supported you
hmm
in the beginning of your business, and then which ones are
hmm
supporting you now?
One of the most magical daily practices that I have not actually been implementing because things got a little hectic for a second, but I'm bringing it back. Taking a walk in nature or doing some yin yoga. That to me, like little bit of trees and grass and nature, and bonus if you see doggies or squirrels, and then yin yoga, as Matt likes to call aggressively laying on pillows yoga, cannot be like I can't oversell it. Those two things I think brought me home to my inner knowing and inner guidance more often. That like allowed me to stop procrastinating or spinning out. And it's like, what's the next right thing? Okay, let's just do that. Just I cannot over recommend. Just take a fucking walk outside. Not listening to this. I mean, this is a podcast. I'm a fan of podcasts, but like just unplugging literally if you're going to listen to music or like nothing. And that's huge, and that is coming back even more powerfully lately. Um, mm, I think journaling is just one of the highest forms of magic. Like especially just in the morning, just dumping out because sometimes you just write shit and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was so angry about that. And so then you like have a chance to like sort of see the gremlins that have been running around setting shit on fire. Another practice that comes and goes with me anytime I want to expand into my next level, it comes. Like this is a magic spell that has no fail. It's just, we do and then we don't do until we do again. I call it PAJing. I call it padging. Sounds very lovely. It's positive appreciation journaling. It was inspired by Abraham Hicks. So I will literally write 10 things that I appreciate about my money. As in, I appreciate that there was a time when I was like, I appreciate that I've been cash positive for 14 days in a row. That was like milestone moment. I appreciate that I have access to credit. I appreciate that I paid all my bills and it's only the 22nd of June. I appreciate, and so always present tense, not like, yeah, just present tense and just appreciate. And so you can write this about your money. You can write this about your business. You can write this about your clients. You can write this about your partner. You can write this about your health. Anything that we appreciates. So it's just writing down an appreciation. And I prefer appreciations to gratitude, because especially when I'm in a cranky pants mood, I don't want to be grateful. And I feel like appreciation opens the door for gratitude and can also be as delicious as gratitude, but it doesn't necessarily require that we show up in our best cheerleader mood. I can appreciate anything, even in bad circumstances, that like, well, I can appreciate that I'm learning from this experience.
Mhm. Plus, who can't turn down saying they're going to go patch?
Right? Like, have you been padging?
Have you
Rhymes with padge. Just PAJ.
Okay, one more quick fire question. What have been your favorite purchases recently for business and then for pleasure?
Mm. Same. So I just got this really phenomenal. It was literally on sale, and I was like, "How is this on sale?" iPod. I like, case. Is it iPod? I don't know. My little ear things, whatever. If you can't see it
AirPod.
at home, it's like AirPods. Oh, the words. It's like a Swarovski crystal crusted case that's like ridiculously glittery. And I was like, "What the hell? Take my money." I love it so much. It just makes me happy every time I take it out of my purse. I'm like, I've become one of those over the top aunties. I love it. I also purchased tickets for me and my beloved to, this is big happy money, to go see my my grandmother is definitely very old at this point in Rhode Island, and we're spending a week in Newport, Rhode Island. So that's going to be so fun. And then we are flying to Denver, Colorado for a Dr. Joe Dispenza week long advanced retreat. And then we're flying home. And in the meantime, I'm paying one of my friends to come live with our two kitties in our downtown apartment. And like, you know, we could definitely have bought a new couch at Restoration Hardware for all of the money that this is ultimately going to cost. And I'm also like, this is big happy money. To me, this is the great luxury. Spend a week with Grammy and Newport and family, followed by a week learning in community in Colorado, knowing that my cats don't have a visitor once a day, but like friend will stay and cuddle them and feed them, and she will be compensated for uprooting her home. I mean, to me, that's big happy money. And actually, they're both for my business and my life. Yay!
Aw.
Including my case.
Thank you so much, Serena. I know you have to jump off. So where can people find you all over the internet and connect with you and go deeper with you?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm at serenahicks.com. Also, I live on Instagram at XOXO Serena Hicks. And if you go to Facebook, I'm actually just using my personal page right now, which is Serena Hicks AF. If you just type that in, you'll find me standing on a gold box in a picture. And I love the socials. So please come say hi, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Serena. And you guys go follow her all the places and tell us about your big happy money experiences. We want to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good
Big
week.
deal.
We do.